Venice, the city of romance, canals, and masked balls. Every year, millions of people flock here to be captivated by the city's beauty. However, deep within the Venetian lagoon, just a few kilometers away from the tourist routes, lies a place that local fishermen still fear to approach. This is Poveglia Island. Known as the Cursed Island, or the Island of the Dead, this small piece of land with one of the world's darkest pasts is, in fact, a massive collective graveyard. It is said that 50% of the island's soil is composed of human ash. Most who have come here never returned, and those who did have never been able to forget what they saw. Today, moving away from myths and leaning on bitter, bloody realities, we are opening the gates of Poveglia. If you are ready, we are entering the most terrifying chapter of history. Poveglia's story actually began not with blood, but with hope. In 421 AD, as the Roman Empire began to collapse, people living on the mainland sought refuge on this small island to escape the massacres of barbarian tribes, the Huns and the Goths. For centuries, Poveglia was a peaceful settlement. People fished, practiced agriculture, and established their own small community. However, everything changed in the 14th century. The wars between Venice and Genoa turned the island into a strategic target. The population was forced to leave the island. The island remained empty, but it wasn't long before new and permanent residents began to arrive. In 1348, the Black Death, the plague pandemic, swept through Europe. Since Venice was a trade center, the disease spread here with lightning speed. The city streets were filled with corpses. The Venetian government had to make a radical decision to separate the sick from the healthy. Poveglia officially became a lazaretto, a quarantine island. Imagine, anyone who coughed slightly, had a fever, or simply touched someone sick was torn away from their family and sent to Poveglia. This was not an exile, it was a death sentence. There was no cure on the island. People were simply waiting to die. Historical documents reveal a horrific reality. The disease spread so quickly that there was no time or space to bury the dead. Giant pits were dug all over the island. Thousands of corpses were thrown into these pits and burned. It is estimated that approximately 160,000 people perished on this island. Yes, the number is not a mistake. Some sources state that the situation was so critical that people who were still breathing but had no hope of recovery were thrown into the piles of corpses and burned alive. It was these events that formed the idea that half the island's soil is human ash. This is not just a legend, it is a scientific possibility. The few researchers who set foot on the island today report finding the remains of carbonized human bones in the soil. After the plague epidemic ended, the island remained empty for a long time. However, in 1922, a new building was erected on the island. In large letters at the entrance, it read, "Psychiatric Hospital." If the plague era was one of physical suffering, the 1920s were an era of torture for the soul and the mind. The Venetian administration began gathering the mentally ill, the elderly and undesirable individuals whom they wanted to isolate from society onto this island. Although official records of what happened here are scarce, patient testimonies and subsequent investigations revealed bone-chilling facts. The reports circulating about the hospital's head doctor resemble a horror movie. It is said that the doctor performed inhuman experiments on the patients. Lobotomy, the cutting of a part of the brain, which was considered a treatment method at the time, was performed here without any anesthesia, using an ordinary hammer and chisel. Patients said they heard screams coming from the bell tower at night. They claimed to see the spirits of plague victims on the island. The doctor, in turn, subjected them to even more severe torture under the diagnosis of madness. The end of this horror was as mysterious as its beginning. According to legend, the cruel doctor who had tormented people for years eventually went mad himself. Screaming that he was being pursued by the ghosts of his patients, he climbed to the top of the hospital's tall bell tower and threw himself down. But there is a strange fact. It is said that the doctor did not die when he hit the ground. Witnesses reported that as he lay dying, a sudden mist rose from the ground and strangled him to death. After this event, the hospital was officially closed in 1968, and the island was completely abandoned. Since then, the Italian government has strictly forbidden entry to the island. Poveglia is now just a dot on the maps, but its terror has spread across the entire world. The question may now arise: if everything remains in the past, why doesn't Italy restore this island or open it to tourists? First, safety. The buildings on the island have decayed so much that they are in constant danger of collapsing. Second involves legal and financial issues. In 2014, the government put the island up for auction. A businessman wanted to lease the island for 99 years and build a luxury hotel there. However, the local population opposed it. They stated that luxury relaxation atop the graves of thousands of people was impossible. And most interestingly, some documentary filmmakers and paranormal researchers who entered Poveglia illegally report fleeing the island. Among the footage they captured are cameras suddenly shutting off, unexplainable voice recordings, and shadows appearing in the corridors. Even the most skeptical people cannot deny the heavy, suffocating atmosphere felt on Poveglia. Is this the energy of the suffering of thousands of people absorbed into the earth, or is it just our imagination? Poveglia Island shows us the darkest side of history. It reminds us how cruel humanity can be to one another in its most desperate times, and how thousands of lives were sacrificed to protect against disease. This is no longer just an island. It is a monument. It is a wound that will never heal, a cry of forgotten souls, and a history shrouded in silence. Perhaps it is for the best, for the island to remain alone with its own secret, because some places are not meant to be visited. They exist only to be remembered from afar. What do you think? Is Poveglia truly cursed? Or is all of this just a game the human mind plays with dark history? Share your thoughts in the comments. Would you like me to help with anything else for your video, such as suggesting specific background music or visual transitions for these sections?